PR Connections Radio presents
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, on prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. Go to all our social medias at Vegas Hockey Hub. And if you're on our YouTube channel at Vegas Hockey Hub, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on all notification bell so you don't miss any episode of Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, it was an incredible Game 1 victory for the Vegas Golden Knights. But there was a key member from that Game 1 victory that we need to talk about. There was a guy who scored that game-winning goal for your Vegas Golden Knights that's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. There's going to be a guy who has a possibility of getting his second contract with your Vegas Golden Knights. And of course, I'm talking about the young 24-year-old Brett Howden. After all, this is a Brett Howden who has been part of the Golden Knights for 2 years now and is going to be a good member of the Vegas Golden Knights in this postseason. But the question you have to ask about Brett Howden: has he earned a second contract with your Vegas Golden Knights? Has his performance this postseason warranted a second contract with the Vegas Golden Knights? Because keep in mind, once again, the Vegas Golden Knights have the ability to re-sign Brett Howden this offseason, the 2023 NHL offseason. He has an ability to re-sign with Vegas. Now, before we get to that part, I'm going to kind of catch you up to speed real quick. Because I want to catch you up and I want to say, who is Brett Howden? Who is the guy that did score the game-winning goal in Game 1 against the Dallas Stars to put your Vegas Golden Knights up 1-0? Who is Brett Howden? Well, we're going to kick it back for just a minute, because Brett Howden is an interesting case, because he started in the Western Hockey League. He came from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and he started his hockey career for the Moose Jaw Warriors of the Western Hockey League. I also want to mention, when it comes to Brett Howden, what he did in his career in the WHL. So for the Moose Jaw Warriors, he only had a 5-game stint in his first season playing Western hockey, only had 1 point in 5 games. But year 2, he in 68 games had 22 goals, 46 points, and he had 24 penalty minutes. Those penalty minutes, by the way, are going to come back in just a second. In 2015-2016, his third year playing for the Moose Jaw Warriors of the Western Hockey League, Brett Howden, 68 games once again, had 2 more goals than the year before with 24, and had a whopping 18 more points from the year before, putting up 64 points and a whopping 61 penalty minutes for the Moose Jaw Warriors in 2015-2016. It's also in 2016 that was his first action playing in the playoffs for the Moose Jaw Warriors, and he had 15 points in 10 playoff games for the Warriors in the Western Hockey League, and he also had the privilege to be named the captain of the Moose Jaw Warriors in 2016. So he went from being the assistant captain to being the captain of the Moose Jaw Warriors heading into 2016. I also want to mention that in the Western Hockey League, he played alongside current Tampa Bay Lightning forward Braden Point. So Braden Point and Brett Howden played alongside each other. Braden Point is doing incredible right now in Tampa Bay, and Brett Howden is doing well here in Vegas. So year 4 of him being with the Moose Jaw Warriors, he's getting prepared, 2016, 2017 season. But before then, he had to get drafted. All right, before he continues his 4th season playing junior hockey, he had to get drafted, and indeed he did in the first round of the 2016 NHL draft. He got drafted 27th overall by the Tampa Bay Lightning. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, they took him in the first round. And this is an interesting situation for Brett Howden because when he got drafted by the Tampa Bay Lightning, he did not join the team right away. In fact, he stayed with the Warriors of the WHL for not just 1 more year, but 2 more years. So in 2016, 2017, 58 games played. He had 38 goals, which was the most he had in his Western Hockey League in a single season, and 81 points for the Warriors. And his penalty minutes, since I keep bringing this up, he had 73 penalty minutes with the Warriors. In the playoffs that year in the Western Hockey League, he had 7 games played, only 3 points, but he had 12 penalty minutes in 7 games. So if you watch Brett Howden or if you analyze Brett Howden, there is 2 major points that you're going to notice. The first is his penalty minutes. He is a guy that will stand up for his teammates. He is a guy who's not afraid to throw down if he has to. And then the second thing about Brett Howden that I picked up on right away is how good he is as a playoff performer in his career. Regardless if it's in the Western Hockey League, if it's in the American Hockey League, or if it's in the NHL, when it comes to Brett Howden, he does well in the playoffs. So, heading into his first season playing professional hockey, Brett Howden, he is 1998, so he is 25 years old. So 25-year-old Brett Howden, 1998, so 2023 minus 1998, that's 25. Now, his 5th and final season playing for the Warriors of the Western Hockey League, he put up 75 points in 49 games. Just to give you a bit of a perspective, he had 51 assists in 49 games. So he essentially had an assist per game with the Warriors in his last season playing Western hockey. He also had 42 penalty minutes in 49 games, kind of reestablishing the point that Brett Howden, he is good at 2 things. The first thing is standing up for his teammates. He racks up a lot of penalty minutes because he's always standing up for his guys. And second is he is a playoff performer. Well, playoff performer, what do you mean? In the 2018 WHL playoffs, in 14 games that year, Brett Howden had 7 goals, 15 points in 14 games. So he had a point per game in the 2016 WHL playoffs, and he had a point per game in the 2018 WHL playoffs. So as we're talking about Brett Howden, the Game 1 overtime winner for your Vegas Golden Knights, I'm kind of giving you a little bit of context about who Brett Howden is before we get to the point. Has Brett Howden earned a second contract for your Vegas Golden Knights? Has Brett Howden, with his performance in the 2023 NHL postseason, has he earned his contract this upcoming offseason with him being a restricted free agent for your Vegas Golden Knights? Now, Brett Howden only played 1 season of AHL hockey, and that was for the Syracuse Crunch in 2017. But for the Syracuse Crunch, in 8 games for Syracuse, he had 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points, and he had only 2 penalty minutes in 8 games. So for a guy like Brett Howden, 6 points in 8 games, being in the AHL, hey, you know what? He has a bright future heading into next year. Maybe he'll put up some stellar numbers in Syracuse the next season. Well, unfortunately, he wouldn't even get the chance to play in Syracuse, as the next season he gets dealt to the New York Rangers alongside Vladislav Nemestikov and a 2018 and 2019 pick in exchange for Ryan McDonough and JT Miller. So he was part of the trade that got Ryan McDonough and JT Miller to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Him and Nemestikov went to New York Rangers. So how did his tenure with the New York Rangers go for Brett Howden? Unfortunately, very underwhelming in terms of Brett Howden. He played 3 seasons for the New York Rangers. In fact, let me pull that up just because, no, right there. Perfect. Fantastic. So when it comes to Brett Howden, his 3 seasons with the New York Rangers, in year 1 of his NHL career, he had 66 games played, 6 goals, 23 points, and 14 penalty minutes, and an astounding negative 16 plus minus. Year 2 with the New York Rangers, 2019-2020, he had 70 games played, 9 goals, 19 points, and 28 penalty minutes, and his plus minus went from a negative 16 to a negative 11 with the New York Rangers. So far in his young NHL career, 2 seasons in, he wasn't putting up the most stellar numbers for a bottom 6 forward. And you know what? He was only 21 years old. He still has time to progress. That's what probably a lot of people in New York thought, is that he was a former first-round pick. He has time to develop and time to grow. How about this COVID-shortened 2020 season? How is he going to do in New York under a 56-game season? Well, Brett Howden was in and out of the lineup for the New York Rangers in that 2020-2021 season, only played 42 games and had only 1 goal, 7 points, and 11 penalty minutes in 42 games. Now, I will give credit. He did suit up in his first playoff appearance, having 3 games played, but unfortunately 0 points. So the New York Rangers was an unfortunate time period for Brett Howden because it felt like he just was kind of in the middle. You know, he wasn't playing almost every single game. He was a healthy scratch at times. There were situations where he'd be on the 3rd line, 4th line, kind of just floundering with the New York Rangers. So in 2021, the New York Rangers decide to deal Brett Howden. And in 2021, the Vegas Golden Knights came calling. So on July 17th, 2021, Brett Howden was traded to the Vegas Golden Knights in exchange for a minor league defenseman and a 4th-round pick in the upcoming NHL draft. So Brett Howden gets a brand new start here in Vegas. And how did he do? All right, how did Brett Howden do in year 1 for your Vegas Golden Knights? 2021, 2022, a brand new start in his career. And he did have a bit of a turnaround. Compared to the 2 years before, he had 9 goals, 20 points, in 47 games played for your Vegas Golden Knights. His penalty minutes was around the same, only 12, but he had, for the first time ever in his career, a positive plus minus. He had a plus 9. The one situation with Brett Howden, unfortunately, that I have to mention is that he only played 47 games out of 82. One of the main reasons for that is that Brett Howden was once again a bottom 6 forward, and he was in and out of the lineup for your Vegas Golden Knights. There was times where he would be a healthy scratch. There were moments where he would be on the 4th line, barely being put into the lineup. So year 1 for Brett Howden didn't look as positive as it should have been. But year 2 might have saved that. Because in year 2, 54 games played, he had 6 goals, 13 points, and 55 penalty minutes, and a plus 5 for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, his postseason performance is what matters. I mentioned before that in the WHL, he performed in the postseason. You know, if you had him be in a right situation, right place, right time, that is what he did. So for Brett Howden, how has he done in the postseason? How has he performed as a Vegas Golden Knight in the postseason? So against Winnipeg, he went on to being on the same line as Chandler Stevenson and Mark Stone. As a matter of fact, Brett Howden right now is on the second line for the Vegas Golden Knights. Because the first line, you have Barbashev, you have Eichel, and you have Marchessault. But on the second line, you have Mark Stone, Chandler Stevenson, and you have this guy here, Brett Howden, on the team. So when it comes to Brett Howden in his postseason, in game 2 against Winnipeg, he had a vital assist that got to Mark Stone in time to score the goal, actually, to help them get the lead against Winnipeg in game 2. And in game 4 against Winnipeg, he scored half of the goals in that game as he had a 2-goal performance and a 4-2 win against Winnipeg in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. So against Winnipeg, he ended up having he ended up having 2 assists, 2 goals against Winnipeg, and against Edmonton, he had 1 assist, 0 goals, but he did have a plus-minus of -4 for the Vegas Golden Knights. So his defense was a little bit suspect against Edmonton. Against Winnipeg, however, something that people pointed out is that he had a +8 against Winnipeg. So Brett Howden, depending on what series you're talking about, against Winnipeg, he was very useful for the Vegas Golden Knights. Being put on the same line with Mark Stone and Chandler Stevenson, him having 2 goals, 2 assists, and a +8 for your Vegas Golden Knights. Him getting the puck to Chandler Stevenson, him getting the puck to Mark Stone. He was very beneficial in the first round. Against Edmonton, his defense was a bit suspect, but his performance in terms of offense is what saved it. The fact that he was able to still get the puck to Mark Stone, who did exceptionally well against Edmonton, and Chandler Stevenson, who you could make an argument is the postseason MVP for your Vegas Golden Knights. Brett Howden has been exceptional for Vegas in this postseason. And against Dallas, he so far has 1 goal, which was a game winner in game 1. He has 0 assists and a +1 for your Vegas Golden Knights. Now, the penalty minutes, I mentioned this earlier in the show, that Brett Howden is known for his penalty minutes. He's known for defending his teammates. Well, Brett Howden, he got into a fight against Edmonton in game 2 and got into a fight against Edmonton in game 4 when it came to Vegas. As a matter of fact, Brett Howden in that game 2, he was someone who went up against Brett Kulak. Yeah, there was a fight, 17 minutes in the game 2 against Edmonton. He went up against Brett Kulak. He actually did very well, actually held his own in that fight. And then in game 4 against Edmonton, there was all the fisticuffs and everything that went flying in that game. And the one aspect that a lot of people took away was the fact that when you had the pushing and shoving and the fisticuffs, Brett Howden had a misconduct penalty with less than half a minute in the game. And there was Edmonton's fans moaning and groaning about him getting suspended on Twitter. Obviously, it did not happen. So when it comes to Brett Howden, when you study his analytics and when you go against what he can do for your Vegas Golden Knights, he has done really well in the postseason. In fact, he is a very underrated player in the postseason for what he has done in his career. So if you're Brett Howden, you have a good amount of momentum riding into the rest of the Western Conference Finals. You have a lot of momentum riding into a potential Stanley Cup final against Florida in the Stanley Cup final. But what I want to talk about with about 10 minutes left to go, will Brett Howden be extended by Vegas? And what I mean is him being a restricted free agent, will Vegas bring him back? Now, in order to understand this question, I'm going to give you both parameters and both equations here. The first one is what Brett Howden's contract currently is and what Vegas's salary cap is going to look like. So Brett Howden, as of right now, the 25-year-old from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, he signed a 1-year deal worth $1.5 million with the Vegas Golden Knights in the 2022 NHL offseason. And when Brett Howden signed that $1.5 million deal, that was a 1-year, pretty much prove it kind of deal with the Vegas Golden Knights. If you compare that to what he did the year before, he signed a $885,000 salary with the New York Rangers before being dealt to your Vegas Golden Knights. So Brett Howden, in his 2 contracts after his rookie deal, he went from $885,000 in 2021 to $1.5 million in 2022. Brett Howden, throughout his career, went from being a guy who made around $800,000 as a rookie to being at $885,000 to being at $1.5 million. I also have to mention his career statistics. He has 34 goals, 54 assists, and 88 points in his career in the NHL. So far, 295 games into his career, 88 points, and he has had 143 penalty minutes in his career. Now, I'm going to give you my opinion on it, but then I'm going to pass it on to everyone watching around the world and give us your opinion on it. Does a guy who has scored 34 career goals and a guy who has had 140 penalty minutes, would you pay him $2.2 million? If you're the Vegas Golden Knights, would you give him a restricted free agent? Would you give him an offer of $2 million? Because I feel like that would be fair for someone like Brett Howden. Because Brett Howden, based off of what he's done in Vegas, keep in mind, he has had 15 goals, 18 assists, and 33 points with the Vegas Golden Knights. He has also had a plus 14 and 67 penalty minutes in Vegas ever since coming over. So if you're Vegas, would you give him $2 million a year? More importantly, would you extend Brett Howden to more than a 1-year deal? Or would you do what you did last offseason and give Brett Howden another 1-year deal to prove it and get a long-term deal next year? Because the Vegas Golden Knights, as much as 2023 NHL offseason is going to be fun, most of the Golden Knights fans understand that 2024 is going to be vital for Vegas. 2024, you have so many free agents who are going to need to get paid. So if you are Vegas, and I'm going to ask everyone watching around the world, would you give Brett Howden a 1-year, $2.2 million deal? Give him another, prove it kind of situation? Or would you give Brett Howden maybe a 2-year deal, but pay him $1.5 million? Essentially pay him the same salary, but it'd be a multi-year kind of deal. You'd be giving him more stability throughout his career in Vegas. If you're Vegas, would you potentially let him go? I mean, after all, Brett Howden being on the middle 6 for Vegas, being on the second line with Chandler Stevenson and Mark Stone, he has been a good part of the Vegas Golden Knights this postseason. He has been a good member of Vegas, having 6 points already in the postseason. Would you let that go and bring in somebody else? Would you let him go and bring up somebody from Henderson, bring up somebody from the minors? Because the last part I didn't mention yet is that the Vegas Golden Knights, their current cap space is questionable. The Vegas Golden Knights heading into next season, they are going to have they have a projected cap hit of about $80 million, according to Cap Friendly. Now, keep in mind, this $80 million is based off of 2 players being on long-term IR. All right, this $80 million, this 3.8, projected cap space, that is based off of Robin Lehner and Nolan Patrick no longer being on the payroll. So if you're Vegas and you don't have Robin Lehner on the payroll anymore, you do not have Nolan Patrick on the payroll anymore, and you essentially are paying only 11 people in terms of forwards. So you'd be paying Eichel, Stone, Carlson, Marchessault, Smith, Waugh, Stevenson, Carrier, Kolazar, Cotter, and Amadio. And then you'd be paying your 8 players on defense. That'd be Pietrangelo, Martinez, Theodore, McNabb, Whitecloud, Haig, Hutton, and Caden Korczak. And you only have 1 goalie in net in Logan Thompson. Obviously, they'd have to change that. But that is the question you got to ask people in Vegas, is that they would be $2.2 million over if there is 1 player still on the team. If Robin Lehner is still part of the organization, they would be $2.2 million over the salary cap. If you get rid of Robin Lehner, you would be $3.4 million under the salary cap. And would you take that $3.4 million and give 2.2 of it to Brett Howden? Do you believe that Brett Howden is such a valuable commodity on the middle six that he is worth a $2.2 million contract in terms of annual value? Because I'm going to say, folks, I believe he is. I truly believe that Brett Howden this past season, especially in the playoffs, has earned that contract. Brett Howden has earned the right to get a $2 million contract from your Vegas Golden Knights. What he has done in Vegas and what he's done in terms of the locker room, he is a good aspect in terms of being in the locker room. He is someone who protects his teammates. He's someone who goes above and beyond to make this team the best it can be. And I think in terms of morale, I think in terms of the way he plays the game and how he deals with Bruce Cassidy, the head coach, I say that Brett Howden, if you buy out Robin Lehner, all right, if you buy out Robin Lehner and you get that $3.4 million in cap space, I say you take $2.2 million of it and you give it to that man right there in Brett Howden. And you know what? You absolutely agree with me. Buy out Lehner and pay Howden. Now, I will say when it comes to the guy you also mentioned, they're going to have to wait until 2025. I have a suspicious feeling that he is only going to get paid once his contract is up. I think when you have a guy who's getting paid peanuts compared to what he actually is worth, I don't think Vegas is going to extend him this year, but probably you're going to wait for free agency and then pay him in 2025. But I agree with you that if they buy out Lehner, they should pay Howden with whatever they have left over from the salary cap. So this was another edition of Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rickelli. Follow me on social media at IanRickelli18 and follow the show at Vegas Hockey Hub. I also want to mention to everyone watching around the world, when it comes to PR Connections Radio, they have a bunch of incredible content on here. You have Cozy Stone. You have For the Love of Business. You have the Professionals podcast. You've got Crypto and Cash. Dana, Guy, all the people working behind the scenes, doing the engineering, all the hard work. I have a lot of respect for people who are, all the people on PRConnectionsRadio.com. I have a lot of respect for everyone who is contributing to PR Connections Radio. and I'm looking forward to all the future content that is on this network. So until next time, this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian McKelly. Continue watching hockey. Go support junior hockey.